It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. All right, back with another podcast. Beautiful Friday. We got Peter Lawrence with us, Chad Juttner, and joining us again, Bruno Barbosa. Say hi in case they don't see you. At least they can hear you. So, Bruno, you sent this article to me last, and I thought it was awesome. And it had all these great psychological facts about human behavior as they kind of apply to our modern age of information. And since we're all kind of immersed in the age of information, I thought it'd be a good podcast to just kind of go through and talk about each one and see how far we get. Number one, the article's called 10 Psychological Facts About Human Behavior in the Era of Digital Technology from uxplanet.org. So that's where this is coming from. So the first one talks about kind of the attention economy, our attention span, and how we're in this battle, our attention.
Yes. Haven't we always been in the battle for our attention, though?
I'm sorry, what was that, Peter? I was
haven't
not
we always
paying attention.
You weren't paying attention. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I think we have. It just seems like the attention span has gotten shorter and shorter, and the amount of things that are trying to grab our attention are ever increasing.
I remember someone saying one time that something like, if you're not paying for something that you use, the product is probably you, right?
Right.
So a lot of our time is actually used, and time and focus is actually used today by companies to kind of gather some more information or to kind of gather something that might be valuable for them. Hence all the policies behind saving information from users or being kind of protective about what kind of information that you're sharing about your consumers and all that. But on top of all this, the more attention you pay to something, the more time you spend, the more they can actually collect from you on that matter. And the psychological effect on us is that we want to get more and more. We actually have another topic in this article that talks a little bit more about that indeed. But the attention economy here, at least in the sense that what I understood from this is how much we actually spend and use giving this attention to kind of these platforms, and they can actually explore that in some way, right? But what are the effects on that in our day-to-day experiences for you guys? So what is something that you guys think that affect you when you have an infinite scrolling or something like that you, like an Instagram, right? You think that you're going to spend 2 minutes in that thing, and then all of a sudden you just realize that you spent 30 minutes an hour. It's really...
I solved that problem. I don't look at Instagram. I think being an old curmudgeon helps with some of that, honestly. Just because you're not going to add the latest fad thing. You'll add it maybe 5 years down the road when it gets more popular, or if it sticks around. I'm still waiting on Twitter to see if it becomes popular or not. But
there's this thing, TikTok, I think it's called, that the kids are raving about. But those are things that, it's short enough that it's watchable. It's easy to watch those short little bursts of entertainment. And then if you got time, all you got to do is flick the scroll wheel and you got another one and another one. I think part of what comes out of this is the clickbait, negative headlines, the fear, anger, whatever emotions they can play on. They're using every trick in the book to get your attention, and
they try.
It's not helping. Like, they're not good tricks. I mean, they work, but there's a cost.
All right, let me ask this question. Are there things at work that do the same thing? I don't know, for instance, like Teams. Chad, any experience with Teams sort of taking you away from your task and holding your attention longer than it should?
I mean, yeah, but that's kind of depends on what role you're in, right? Like, right. I'm not necessarily in a role where I can just mute Teams for, 2-3 hours a day, ignore it, and do other things. So I think for me, it...
Do you know anybody that's muted Teams for hours?
Yeah. Oh, we'd recommend. Yeah,
what?
I'd recommend it to if you're
really.
just, well, I wouldn't want to say if you're just if you're in a contributing role and your output is a deliver development work, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mute Teams. Like, who cares?
Wow.
Pretend it's 2004 and we didn't have all these tools and you just took your phone off the hook. It's the same thing.
In 2004, I would walk down and I would bug you in your cube, and I would care less how much you tried to get rid of me.
Yeah.
I'd be like,
But,
yeah, whatever. I'm
that
here.
takes effort on, so my day is incredibly interrupt driven, but that's the nature of my role, not necessarily the nature of my attention span. I don't disagree with the article, right? The infinite scroll and the autoplay and everything else.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Like when I'm watching baseball stuff on YouTube or Instagram, there's some great content on there around the sport that I love. And if they're just going to continue to shovel it into my eyeballs, then yeah, I'm going to keep watching.
Right.
Longer than I would otherwise. But, things like day to day, like when I'm at work, maybe not necessarily the same thing, right? Like I'm not looking at Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, which used to be, what was TikTok before it was TikTok? It was something else.
I don't
remember.
remember.
It was a thing where kids would just lip sync to videos.
Yeah. You have to look that up.
Vines preceded TikTok in terms of short cute little videos, but so you're talking about the actual platform.
Yeah. So Bruno, you've silenced Teams for more than 5 minutes, and
I silenced some of the teams inside Teams. Right?
Okay.
So there are some teams that they need my attention.
Yeah.
Everything else that it's out of that kind of scope of what I need to be doing and out of the scope of my work, I kind of mute them, and so I can actually give attention to that channel when I have a dedicated time for that. I try to kind of keep my focus on the stuff that I need to do, right? So I mute many things. I actually communicate a lot via WhatsApp with my friends. And this is also a time dragging kind of thing. Like you start interacting with that thing and you can't control that, right? Which is kind of a little bit back of what the article says. Like you have these kind of resources that actually keep users engaged for longer than they initially intended, right? So once you're conscious about it, you can try to say, oh, I'm spending too much time in this, and then I can get out. I think Instagram is the tool that actually came up with this kind of thing of how much time you can actually spend inside of it. And then after a while, they're actually going to throw you an alert saying, oh, you already spent your quota for the day on this. So
there's in terms of like stuff at work that grabs your attention, you can get a Slack message and then you open Slack and then there's another red dot and you can look at that, and then all of a sudden you're making jokes and looking out, like it can suck you right in. The other side is like the short attention span is like when you write a Slack message and then you're staring, waiting for so-and-so is typing, like, get back to me.
That reminds me, I just needed to hit one character and backspace a lot.
So get familiar with notification, like silencing capabilities and all of that.
That it also says in here, this push notifications. I turn off every single push notifications in my phone as much as I can. Because again, my line of work is like Shad was mentioning, right? In my line of work, I actually need attention to be focused in one thing. If I have things popping up all the time trying to drag my attention, I can't be productive, right? So this is kind of my strategy is I silence everything that's not something that is truly needed for my work or the stuff that I'm trying to get. This is during my work hours.
So who's checking Teams on Saturday? Anybody?
I do for work.
Is your users more 24/7 365 or not so much?
No, but for the particular use case or the problem that we're solving for my client, there are critical times, and it's mornings, and it's 6 days a week. So I'll check Teams, for my customer. I'll check it 6 times a week to make sure that everything's running well.
Yep.
I'll check it 7 times a week because usually on the 7th day, God rested, but we don't, right? So we actually get kind of busy, or I do at least. I sometimes get busy doing everything else that with my role. And that's not always just client work, right? Like as consultants, we have status reports to write and time cards to fill out and reviews to do and all sorts of ephemera. And that's not stuff I can do Monday through Saturday anymore. I reserve a part of Sunday for that. And that's me checking Teams, well, not Teams, but getting back to everything that I bookmarked throughout the week for non-client work that I have to do. So it's a lot.
But you seem to be a very organized kind of person, Chad. Like if you have the time bucket for this stuff.
I have reminders and I have a routine and I have a schedule, and that's very, and we should talk about that sometime in the future. That helps me a lot. If it wasn't for that, without a routine, I'd be kind of screwed. It's I don't know. I mean, the tools that we use don't necessarily impact that, and social media for me doesn't impact that. I'll throw something out on Slack. Like I think I'm a little more active on Slack than some of our consultants. But for me, it's fire and forget, right? Okay. Like I'll just shoot it out there and I'll be like, I'll see if anybody says anything in a couple hours.
You're using it as sort of a interactive communication medium. So you just throw it out there. Eventually somebody will reply, maybe or not, and then you'll look and see.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, you're not kind of trying to do a real-time chat session, doing that quick hit and moving on.
Right.
Number 2 is called the paradox of choice. So now we live in this age of
abundance. This is one of my favorites.
Abundance. And this is kind of a sales thing too, where if you have too many choices, it leads to information overload, decision fatigue. It's too much. The magic number is 3. 3 choices is like, for some reason, it's easy to pick because you got something to turn down, and then you have something that isn't as good as the thing you really want. Then you have the best thing.
Well, that sounds like a sales guy right there.
and this is very interesting because it reminds me something that I learned during college in an administration and management kind of class, where the teacher explained about the opportunity cost, which is pretty much, at least the concept that I learned, was that every time that you have a choice, by choosing something, you're choosing not to do something else. And that can lead to some kind of regret. But you need to be conscious about it because you're choosing to do something, so you're not doing something else, right? And this can lead to kind of freezing or some dissatisfaction. Oh, I wish I could have ordered that dish instead of this one. Like when you're with a group of friends in a restaurant, you have especially Mexican restaurants, you have a bunch of options, right? And then you choose one, and then your friend chooses another one. So I wish I could have ordered that one. It looks much better than mine. But and this is really interesting because in the digital world, for instance, there's this stand-up comedian that I watch sometimes. The guy says that most of the time, most of his days, he actually spends watching Netflix, but not watching the stuff on Netflix. He actually is watching Netflix because he's choosing what he wants to watch and never chooses anything. So he's actually just watching Netflix, going through the things and the options that he has because he can't simply choose anything, right?
Oh, I'll go across Netflix, Prime. I'll hit all of them because I want that best perfect thing. And I've gone past 50 perfectly fine things to watch. But for some reason, it's just too many options. It's embarrassment of riches.
I wonder if social media or YouTube or TikTok or things like that have trained us to watch short videos have sort of hurt Netflix and those kinds of services to watch things. Although a lot of times Netflix is breaking up its 3-hour movies into 8 different episodes or something like that.
You can only really focus on one thing at a time. So you can't watch 2 shows at once. You can't watch, if you're watching TikTok videos and a movie, then you're not watching either one of them very well. And then you watch that movie again down the road and you're like, it's like I've never seen this before. This is amazing. I think that this might be kind of what's happening with streaming and with movie theaters and that whole entertainment business is there's going to be eventually there's only going to be so many left standing.
Which brings me back to the cost of opportunity that I just mentioned. Like, does this thing that I'm choosing, this movie or this series that I'm starting watching, does the satisfaction of watching that thing covers the dissatisfaction that I will have to not be watching something else, right? So I think that the good thing, the learning here is like be aware of the choices that you're making and try to be happy with them, right? Try to not like choose something and go with it. Try not to kind of keep looking or keep regretting. Be conscious about it. Be aware.
So I know, like when I've watched sports in the past, and Chad, maybe you can weigh in on this. Baseball is not exactly thrill a minute. Neither is football, really. There's a lot of commercial breaks and things like that. And hey, look, there's 3 games on today, and I'm going to watch all 3 of them, but independently and by switching channels a lot. Do you find that to be the case, Chad, or?
Yeah, not really. So one of the best things about baseball is the downtime isn't necessarily a bug, it's a feature. We go to games, I mean, I go to a couple of games a year.
Yeah.
And it's a social event, not the game is there, but your friends are there too. I can go get a beer or two and not really miss, a lot of the game. I make sure I'm in my seat when the Twins are batting, but
okay.
You've got a half inning to go around and explore the ballpark or do whatever. And then during the inning, even if the Twins are batting, you've got downtime to, be with your people. And the same with football. I watch every single Vikings game from the same bar in Northeast Minneapolis every Sunday or Thursday or Monday or whenever it's on. And it's the same thing, right? Like the downtime is kind of a feature. I'm there with friends. I'm there with, with people I want to be there with. And it's a social event with a game in the background. Yes, I love the Vikings and I love the sport and I love everything about it, but
right. But watching a 6-inch run is not as exciting as watching.
I'm not going to say that. I mean, I'm told every inch matters, but it's still exciting. It's it's a reason to be with, and baseball's the same way, right? Like it's 162 reasons to hang out with your friends. I also like hockey and basketball, but those are games that you have to have your eye on the entire game, right? Like there's penalties and flopping and fighting and whatever, but I prefer the pace of baseball and football over anything else. And I can watch this is the best time of year for me right now because I don't flip through, like when I go to bed, thank God we're in the central time zone. I go to bed and I just flip on whatever game is on the West Coast that just started at like 9 p.m. I don't even have to think about it. If it's the Padres, the Dodgers, the Mariners, whatever.
Whoever's there.
Whatever. It's there, it's on, and I'll fall asleep to that.
Nice. So Bruno, any thoughts on soccer/football having that same opportunity for hanging out and grabbing a beer, or?
Yeah, I think it works the same. I think sometimes a game is more like an excuse to hang out than an actual kind of following up with the game. But definitely there are different kind of it's not frequency, different flows for each one of these games that we were talking about. And definitely I have my favorite. I'm a soccer fan, right? It's much more dynamic, much less advertisement and and more game going on. So I'd rather that brings me more satisfaction than other games, but I can't watch that all year. And I like to watch something else from time to time too.
I like to watch anything else but sports. So I'm not, I'm not in the majority there. And going to sporting events, it's like, yeah, there's time between things to hang out and whatever, but I find that during that time, the people I'm with are talking about sports, and it's just sports. And not being a person that likes watching sports,
it's different.
It's different.
You had a question.
Anyway,
I was
number
say,
3.
Bruno,
hold on. Chad had a question.
I'm trying to get into soccer, man. Like I really am. And I feel like it's very much like baseball, right? Like a really exciting game could be 2-1. And you might have to go with me to a Loons game soon, because the best thing about soccer is, like I was saying with everything else, the social aspect to it, right?
Yep.
So I've got a buddy that's super into the Loons, and they do the whole thing where they start at Blackheart and they do the whole procession down University to the stadium, and it's this whole like massive event. And then you get to the game and they actually have a supporters section, right? Like they've got the stands where, normal people sit. And then they've got the supporter section where everybody's standing up, and that's where they throw the streamers down. They got the signs, they got the whatever. And I'm desperately trying to get into the game, man. I just need a little help. I need that one guy that is super into it that can like explain the nuance to me that I'm missing.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, let's plan a Saturday, dude.
Oh, for sure. And I think there's a huge difference between the dynamics of the baseball and the soccer. Because, again, I think in the American culture, you guys are used to have lots of points and scores and high numbers, right? In the football, you score 7 every time you score, it's kind of 7 points. Okay, in the soccer, just like in hockey, right? It's much more dynamic kind of sport. And you can have an awesome game, really dynamic game that is 1-1 in the end. Yeah. But it was an awesome game in the end. So I think it's kind of different kind of aspects of each game. But yeah, definitely understanding the rules and having a nice company to go to these things is going to definitely bring you more satisfaction, and you learn how to love it.
I think the stadium too. Excel Energy Center is a great place to watch the Wild. I used to, I will sit through a hockey game. Yeah. That's the one sport I will go watch, and because it's fast and I like that speed. They're moving fast. Watching soccer, I look at those guys running that much and I get so tired on their behalf. I mean, it's got to be the most physically grueling sport out there because they're always running. That's crazy. So number 3 is echo chambers. And I think we all know what echo chambers are. We build them ourselves with the help of algorithms and whatnot. To where we're just all of a sudden one day, everything we see is things we agree with. And we're missing out on a whole bunch of other stuff that might make us think, shed some light on some things. We're missing a lot.
I think from the items on this list, this one is the most dangerous for our growth, personal growth, right? When you only have people around you or like stuff around you that only agrees with you, it might be comfortable, but it can be dangerous. That's what I think. I like from time to time to have some different aspects of thinking on how to handle stuff. I remember recently we had a presentation at SAG about Bitcoin and crypto, how you shouldn't invest in that stuff. And I watched that whole thing, and I completely disagree with everything. But there are arguments that are completely opposite of what I think. But I want to understand that because I also want to see the other side of things so I can be aware if something is risky. I can be, I didn't see that coming. If I know what I don't know, right? I think it's better for you.
I think, SDG specifically has this problem, right? We have massive echo chambers within SDG. I talk to consultants 95% of the time that I'm working, right? Almost every gosh darn conversation I have is with consultants. And so when we have concerns, that echo chamber amongst consultants gets magnified and amplified. But also I see it in, our approach to clients too, right? Like we talk amongst ourselves as consultants and we view these things as through our lens because we've seen these problems before. And then we talk to each other and we just magnify our opinions amplify our own opinions and not maybe kind of disconnect from the initial, like, well, here's the evolution of how this client got to the point where they're at with this problem, right? Because we look at something, we're like, yeah, I've seen that dozens of times. Whereas like you lose out on the lens of the client where they're like, well, yeah, it is. But like we started here and you don't see all the progress we made to get to this thing. Yeah.
There's always a good reason why things happen at the time.
Yeah. There's very few. Go ahead, Bruno.
No, I just wanted to wrap up this idea that what Shed was just mentioning, because I think that it's really interesting. And if we can show this image during the podcast, I think it would be really cool too, because we have this image where it says the stuff we know, it's surrounded by the stuff we don't know, but we kind of know it's there. But it's surrounded by the stuff that we don't know, right? The stuff we don't know that we don't know. And this is kind of the dangerous kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's when you go into a customer starting a new project, they're kind of in that situation. Yep. They don't know what they don't know. So they're relying on you to kind of fill in the gaps and help bring them up to speed and make good decisions. But again, you can get into an echo chamber of your own tool set.
Are you saying that Spring? Was it Spring? Is that the one?
No. I use Spring Boot all the time But I mean, that's kind of true. I would say I would get into an echo chamber of my own. Like, I have a strong preference for the technology stack that I'm familiar with.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to go out to some place and say, no, Azure DevOps is the absolute way to go. I have no idea. Right? Like, I'm very comfortable in Amazon. I'm very comfortable in the Java stack. And I'm very comfortable with identifying a kid that knows JavaScript really well, because I don't. I'm not as confident with other things. And I'm getting slightly more comfortable with, the AI tool chains that we're all familiar with, right? Like Chain and Python and the Jupyter, like all of the ML.
But you don't know. That's the thing. They're there, but you know that you don't know those things, right? You understand where it exists.
Yeah. What Kyle's saying is true. I am super confident in the tool chain that I've been using for, especially the last 10 years, but I mean, in general, I've been a Java guy for a quarter century now.
Right.
And it's all of us. It's not just, I'm not just picking on Chad. It's really any developer, technologist. You have your comfort zone, the things that work, because that's what you want to do. You want to make things work. You want to be successful.
You want to make things work and fast. You want to get there fast.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to get stuck in the rut. Like I did get stuck in a rut for, when I was doing kind of my own thing for most of a decade. I built up I've kind of calcified my skill set around these certain things.
I don't know. Maybe one thought that I just had based on this conversation here too is I think it's something inherited to work with technology is that the technology will change at some point. Things will get deprecated. So if you start feeling that you're too comfortable with some technology or some tech stack, you should start kind of looking for being a little bit uncomfortable, because that's healthy too. Like looking for stuff that you might not know. So for instance, we just went to OSN that brings up a bunch of other kind of ideas of how to do things a little bit better or a little bit different. Be in touch with stuff that you don't know or you didn't even know that you didn't know, and have some sort of collaboration. I think this is really healthy for your profession, especially the technology profession.
Information overload, cognitive overload. Like there's just so much coming at you. Decision fatigue, making it difficult to filter and prioritize, and can affect your ability to make decisions and your stress level and all of that. To paraphrase this article, I think that's just a given that we're all getting blasted in so many different directions. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think Shad mentioned something before when I asked him about the organization, right? Like having a routine, having some sort of way to intake information and try to silence stuff that are overloading you with all the time, with stuff that are not relevant to what you should be doing. And again, it's a little bit of a choice too, to try to focus. But yeah, we do have information from all sorts. I remember during COVID, I think this was when I was the most stressed about having information. And one thing that my friends told me is stop watching the news, man. Like have a whole day or 2 days that you don't watch that stuff, because we were being bombarded with information of all sorts that were not helpful. Like, what's going on. Like, let's just intake some information a bit at a time. But also having your routine, having some kind of way for you to process and time dedicated for that, I think it helps a lot too.
Yeah, I think the 24-hour news cycle has definitely changed the way that people take in information. And it's also kind of changed the way that people discuss information. I know we talked about, sort of building your own bubble. You can watch whatever news source you want now, anytime you want. You don't, back in the good old days that us old folks remember, where there were 3 or 4 channels and news was on at 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and that was it. If you didn't catch it, well, it'll be back tomorrow.
You look back and there was a time where you didn't get your news until you went into town to get your, sack of flour, your coffee, your bacon, your bullets, your bolt of gingham.
Right.
And then you found out what was going on from the one newspaper or your neighbor. I don't think we really need to know everything that's going on in the world as soon as it happens. And I don't believe that in that 24-hour news cycle that you can be as objective and truthful. And, it's too soon. You haven't the whole story hasn't unfolded. It takes time. So I think unplugging, because I do that. I unplug from the news and I'll take a week or two off, and it is really helpful. It's like I'm going to read like articles, information about things, blog posts, and not go through my feed and look at news stories and stuff. And then when I come back, it's like, well, I didn't really miss a whole lot.
No.
It's still available to scan through. And now maybe you have the complete story instead of just the beginning of it. Dopamine feedback loops is next. But Bruno, go ahead. You had one more thing to say.
No, just one thing, just really quick here. That I want to say, this article that I sent to you is part of my kind of routine of going to bed. I try to read some articles before going to bed. That's the time that I try to intake information, right? Because it helps me relax, it helps me go to bed and all that stuff. So anyways, this is kind of just one of the examples of kind of being a little bit more productive with my time and trying to intake information that's relevant to what I can intake. That's all.
Number 5 is dopamine feedback loops, which I think is related to all these things. You want to feel good, and there's a reward system in your brain that kicks out a chemical that makes you feel good, makes you happy. That's why there's habits. That's why there's good habits and bad habits.
This is my dopamine right here. Hey, buddy.
As his dog on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this thing, and again, we're coming back to those infinite scrolls, or the first thing that you do in the morning is to check your phone for messages and stuff like that, right? And I think we are being less and less acceptive for frustration. We want to have some kind of positive reinforcement, or some sort of small pleasures all the time. And it doesn't last long, right? Just, again, being conscious about it a little bit, and make sure that you need some frustrations. The world can't be happy all the time. And you have to do the stuff that you have to do sometimes.
And I think, you're with this building a confirmation bubble and seeing everything you agree with, and you're like, yeah, that makes you feel good. I agree with that. That's a good point. Yeah, that's all part of that reward system, and then it makes you desire a tighter confirmation bias, and your bubble gets stronger and stronger, forms a shell. Do you go, if you post something, do you go and look to see if somebody liked or commented, or like, do you feel that pull?
Depends on where I post. Yeah. I usually have, I have all notifications turned on, and then I find that as long as I can read the little message bubble and go back to work and ignore the rest of it. Most of the time that works really well. Some of the times I'll get caught off and go off into the deep lands, but just a little blurb, something's happening, cool, okay. Moving on. Or if there's enough things happening, it's just like static in the background, and you don't even notice it.
Have you heard how many dings that my laptop has made? Does that come across?
Sometimes. I've heard a few of them.
My family text chain is blowing up, and I usually mute that, but I mute that by muting the entire laptop. I've been trying to figure out how to mute the whole thing here. But that message, that noise for me, outside of like just one or two people, it's the opposite of dopamine. My phone will buzz or beep or whatever, and it's this weird thing, right? Because there's one or two people that I'm really excited to hear from, and then like when I see it's not that person, I'm like, okay, all right, and then it buzzes, and it's like I'm like this Pavlovian response, right, where I'm like looking at it and I'm excited, I'm like, no, never mind, and it's it's the same thing over and over again.
Something interesting that I did the other day is, at least on the iPhone or on the Mac, you can actually change the noise of notifications. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna notice how interesting it is when you change the noise, because you're used to that alert buzz, and that kind of triggers kind of your reaction to check a message. When you change that noise, you don't have the same trigger. It takes you a little bit more time to actually, I actually got a message. Let me check that out.
Yeah, I wish with the iPhone, I could assign a noise for a text message to an individual. I think I can assign one to the entire app, but I can't assign it to an individual. And oh my God, I would be stupidly happy if, if I could assign a particular...
New app ideas out there for people to help chat out.
I think it's just Apple, man. Like they administratively say, like you can't, there's no hook into that event. But yeah, if I could just assign like to specific people or something, right? That'd be awesome.
The Imperial March, something like that. I don't like texts. I don't like texting on my phone. I just don't like it. And group texts are the worst.
I hate it. That's why I have it on my MacBook, right? So that's why I'm stuck in the Apple ecosystem, is because I can text from my laptop, and I can text like I type on Slack or anywhere else, where it's like, here's a thought, here's a thought, here's a thought, instead of here's a paragraph. Now here's a follow-up to that previous dissertation. And then here's a bibliography, right? Like, I hate those. But I will send like 30 messages to, I think I just did this to Claire the other day, or Bree or somebody, I don't know, on Slack. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I got a question. And then like, not just like type out the question, but just like, one sentence, sometimes one letter, one character at a time.
Oh, nice. Bang, bang.
One clear. Yeah. CLARE! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
When you get 20 dings for one paragraph from one person,
it's endearing.
It's too much. It is not endearing.
Not what I thought you were going to say.
We're going to have to disagree to disagree. Dopamine feedback loops. Number 5, we're on to social comparison and anxiety.
Keeping up with the Joneses. It's not just the 1950s anymore.
You post your best life on the social medias. You don't really throw out your problems to the world or the reality of your life all the time. I think that might be changing as the stigma around certain things has, gone way down.
I don't see that. I see so many depressed people on social media now. And I don't know if it's just the generation I'm a part of, but I don't do Facebook anymore. I mean, I'll post a picture. So here's my Facebook feed, right? I could almost share it. Baseball, Otis, baseball, Otis, kids, baseball, Otis, right? Like, that's all you see on my feed. And it's always just pictures, and that's it. Other folks other communities I'm a part of, it is just like sadness and depression and rejection, because there's other things in town that I do that are like, it's the rejection is a huge part of it. But, you could keep that to yourself. Not a lot of people do it.
I'll send you a copy of my echo chamber, which is just people posting awesome things.
Yeah, that's what I try to do.
Every picture was taken by professional photographers, and sometimes you see all that stuff going on, and if you don't have it going on in your own life, you can kind of get that FOMO, which is another one on this list somewhere, that's kind of related. But the comparisons of their lives are way better than my life, or that person's got it going on and I don't, because they're posting these wonderful things. It's a reality, I think.
It's a thing that you can change, though, right? Like, I try to change it. Like, I don't want anybody to feel FOMO. That's when I do an event, like I've done things at SDG outside of like what we normally do, right? Like, we just had OSN. We had an OSN after party. Who did I invite? Literally everybody I talked to that day. Hey, in case you're curious, we're going to do this thing afterwards, right? I know that feeling, and I know that there's ways to get around it. And you just need like 1 or 2 people to help folks get through that, right? Like, I did that with our OSN after party. We had a Christmas party where it was literally for the previous 3 weeks, like everybody I bumped into in the office, hey, we're doing this little Christmas party. Come if you want. No pressure if you don't. We did the thing with AI, right? Like, hey, Friday mornings, if you want to talk AI, we're going to be at the Spy House Coffee House in Northeast Minneapolis. Doesn't always have to be about drinking. We can have coffee too. Those Fridays, I don't know if you listen to those podcasts on those Fridays, but I was caffeinated AF. Talk to a millennial if you need to know what AF stands for. But I don't know, man. I get it, but like, I'm sorry, I talked too long.
And this is, again, it's interesting because this is part of this digital life, right? When you only see, just like you mentioned, Kyle, the article says, you only see the good part of people's lives because it's what you're willing to share. Of course, we have more acceptance to other sides of people's lives today, but still, if you're sharing something, it's because you want to share or show. And it's really interesting. There's this old saying in Brazil that says that everybody can see the drinks that I take, but nobody sees the falls that I did, right? It's easy to see one's accomplishments, but it's also interesting to try to figure out how this person did that, because it wasn't a happy path all the time. And just you need to be aware of that. When someone is sharing something that's kind of an accomplishment, there was probably lots of kind of ups and downs on that path, and it's kind of interesting to kind of see that story and missing that kind of personal communication, a personal kind of interaction, just like Chad was saying, in a more kind of in-person thing, I think you can have the chances to kind of exchange more of those experiences and take something out of it, take something out of one's success, right? Not only like the pride or envy or any kind of those capital scenes from the social media kind of stuff.
Well, I think there's a good side to this, and that's being able to see, hearing the stories of what it took and having that kind of at your fingertips. There's a lot of articles, a lot of YouTube videos, knowing what a profession is really like. You have these ideas of, I want to be this when I grow up, and I want to be an astronaut. And it's like, well, I hope you like enclosed spaces and restricted movement and bone density loss, and you can look through that stuff and make a more informed decision about like the path you want to take or hobbies you want to get into. Some hobbies are very expensive, but you don't know that until you start getting into it, and then you're going down a rabbit hole.
Money laundering, terribly expensive.
It is very expensive. The Google effect, we have this prosthetic brain that we store things in that's called Google.
Don't store anything.
And so people don't remember things. GPS is a good example of this.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Do you know your brother, sister, mom's phone number in your head?
Not my sister's, but I do know my mother's and my brother's and mine.
I know my neighbor's from when I was growing up phone number in my head.
I remember when I was a child, this was a kind of a safety issue. So as a kid, you were supposed to memorize the phone number of your house, or at least my mom's phone number from work. So if anything happened to me, someone could actually call her, right? And today we kind of have this easy access to information all the time. And this is interesting because this also impacts the IQ of people. People think they're more intelligent or smarter than they actually are because they have access to something really easy to check about, right? Anyways, it's just another thing that comes with the technology age of easy access to information. You also you're supposed to be using your brain to something else other than storing irrelevant information. But at the same time, we're stopping to train our brain to kind of stuck with the important stuff that we should.
Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think AI is going to be the new Google? Is that going to be the replacement for this on the list?
Definitely. I think it's already starting to be that. Just a day-long conversation with ChatGPT.
I think that is going to make smart people stand out more than regular people, if anything, right? Because regular people will be more productive and, it'll enhance and support their skill sets. Smart people will be able to say like, hey, what the hell are you doing here? That's nonsense. And a regular, like average developers will just be like, well, I had AI assist help me with that, right? But I didn't really look past that. So I think AI is going to be amazing. It's going to be an awesome productivity tool, and it's going to enhance a lot of aspects of everything. But I think as far as our career path specifically, it's not going to make it any worse. Right? Like we're not going to offload, we're going to be slightly, our velocity might increase a little bit, but I think it's going to be easier and easier and easier for smart people to really, really shine in this new world where like everybody's relying on AI as this crutch, just like everybody used to rely on Google search results to sound smart. Like, hey, I just Googled this one thing. And it's almost like that, remember that scene in Good Will Hunting, right? Where he's like, oh yeah, you read this off of page 34 from this book, right?
That's Vicus.
Yeah, next semester you're going to take the next class, and after that it's going to be this, right? That's just what AI is going to do for you, right? And it's not bad, right? Because we're going to have competent people producing serviceable code, but
I think you're also going to have
an opportunity for people with experience and wisdom to actually look at that and say, yeah, that's great, it works, but
I mean, it's just like working with a junior developer now, right? I mean, they come out of school, they know a lot of things, but do they know everything? And if you let them just code whatever they want to, you aren't going to be able to support that in about 5 minutes, right? Well, I used a bunch of go-to statements. I thought that was really a good idea today because, it existed in the language. Nobody was using them, so I figured I would get some use out of them.
I think it's going to fill a gap for a lot of people like that don't have a certain skill set. It'll give them a kind of a crutch to lean on in areas that they wouldn't really be able to succeed at,
I don't disagree with that at all. I use it I mean, myself, like, I'm not an expert on Python. I don't know Python like I know Java. And as I'm trying to pick it up, I'm relying on AI to help, boost what I don't know with, its stuff. But I don't know yet if it's good, right? Like, I know that I can achieve a result with the code that by an AI assist, but I don't know if it's performant. I don't know what the bugs are going to be. I don't know what it's going to do at scale, and probably
you just Google it then and see if it's right.
It's knowledge. It's not wisdom. Right. So,
yeah, but I think the aspect that's strong in the article here is they mentioned the ability to retain and remember information. Right. I understand that AI is going to contribute with the performance for everyone. And it's going to kind of I agree with you, Shad, on that sense. But something that I think is really important, at least for me, is to be able to keep memorizing some stuff and practice that muscle as I grow old. Right. My grandfather passed away last year, 99 years old, and he was still kind of remembering everything. My grandmother, that didn't practice or play games or like sing songs and stuff like that as active as my grandfather did, she didn't have that same mind in 93 with 93 years old. So it's a little bit of a health thing for me, at least, of trying to practice that muscle as any other muscle in my body as well, other than just only by being productive or not. It's also a matter of being healthy for me.
I think we're at the end. We got through 7 of them, which means we're going to have a part 2.
Maybe.
Any parting thoughts before we shut her down, gentlemen?
I think this was a good discussion.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I think with that, we can just say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.